everybody, and welcome to another live weekly energy forecast. So in these sessions, we have a little look at the astrology for the week ahead. We have a look at the moon phase that we're under, and we also have a look at the energy of the season and how these all layer on top of each other to create our experience of the week, and how best to work with that energy as well. So we'll go into some practical tips, and we'll also go into the transits and how to and how I guess what to expect for the from the week, what's coming up. So very like soft and gentle, watery week, actually. Things are really going to ramp up in March and April. But this week, we are in a last quarter moon phase, so the energy is descending. So we have the full moon, which is at the peak of the energetic cycle, and then energy starts to wane. And turn inward as we head then towards another new moon. So energy is kind of becoming a lot more reflective coming off the back of that full moon. So it's a time to evaluate, reflect, understand. There's still excess light around as you come off the full moon headed towards that first quarter moon as well. So that's really good to be aware of. This time, it's a time where you can get a lot of clarity, and really understand what needs to go, what we need to let go of, what we need to transform in order to then step into the new phase of a cycle. Because if you go into a new phase of a cycle and you're holding on to things that maybe you needed to let go of or reflect on or shed, then you don't have space for new. So this is a great time to evaluate, and we'll be pushed to do this at this time. We have a lot of watery energy, so we've got very soft, intuitive influence this week. We've got all the transits that we've got coming up for the week that are key are somehow related to Pisces energy. We're going from like cool, logical Aquarius season, which is where we've been for the last 30 days, or like well, less than 30 days, roughly. But and we're headed into Pisces season, so it's a real shift in tone. Aquarius is very serious. It can be because it's ruled by Saturn, and we'll get into like the nitty-gritty of what that means, but it is a significant tone shift. It's more around, instead of cool logic, it's more emotionality. It's more things that don't have physical form. Pisces is very soft, compassionate, gentle, and it's very like ethereal as well. So there's a real kind of gear shift this week. And it does align really, really beautifully with the energy of the winter season as well, because the winter season is also associated with the water element in the Chinese medicine model. And it is a time because there's less energy around. We don't have the loudness of external kind of going out there, making things happen. We're more able to be quiet and listen to the depths of your intuition. Like you get connecting with your core self is a lot easier in the winter because there's less noise. And this Piscean energy really lines up really nicely with that. Also, with Pisces being the last sign in the zodiac and us being in a last quarter moon phase this week, there is this real sense of wrapping things up, kind of coming to completion. So the astrological new year is technically like the first of Aries as we step into the first sign of the zodiac. So we're now entering Pisces season, which is the last 30 degrees of the zodiac before we then move into like a fresh synodic cycle with the sun. So there is this sense of endings. So it's a great time to reflect. We're also wrapping up the winter season. So each season starts with a cardinal sign. So Aries, Cancer, Libra, Capricorn. It peaks with a fixed sign, so the energy where it's most consistent and steady, and then it ends with a mutable sign. So mutable signs are all about endings, wrapping things up. So this is a great time to kind of get clear on what the winter season's been bringing you, what themes have been coming to the surface, and then really taking these next 30 days as well as this week to start that process of wrapping up, of reflecting, of understanding, when you're going to be ready to step into this the new season and beyond as we move into the spring. We have a really nice Mercury Mars transit trine as well, which is going to be reflecting this, but we'll get into that a little bit more as we move through the astrology. Okay, yeah. So I guess just before we move into the details as well, things are going to ramp up considerably in March and April. So it's a really good opportunity to utilize this time now. This really soft, watery energy is beautifully aligned with the season. So that means that there is opportunity to nourish, dream, soothe, ground, get clear before energy really starts to pick up as we move into March and April. We get eclipse season, we get lots of outer planets changing signs from soft dreamy Pisces into fiery Aries. So there is going to be a real tone shift as we move into the spring, and they're the two biggest months of the year astrologically as well. So getting that downtime, that quiet time where you can really listen and pay attention to where you're being guided to. These next few weeks are going to be absolutely key for you to be able to navigate that next period, and having the right fuel to navigate that next period with a lot more ease. Okay, so astrological highlights of the week. Let's get into it. So, as I mentioned earlier, the sun is entering Pisces on Tuesday, the 18th of February. So we've got the last day of Aquarius season today, and then we're going to be transitioning into Pisces season. So we're going from a cool logic to soft, dreamy, compassionate Pisces. So we're going from an air season to a water season. Air is like logic, communication, whereas water is emotions, it's intuition, it's feminine. It's feminine, whereas like air signs are masculine quality. So it's a lot more kind of like logic. Even though air doesn't have structure, there is a sense of structure, particularly with Aquarius energy, because it's ruled by Saturn, which is the planet that has boundaries with the rings around it. Um, Water seasons can be very magical, and there's a real sense of like connecting with the depths of yourself and also the beyond. So this is the last run of the dreamy magical energy before it's full speed ahead into the spring season. It's a great time for creative energy and conceiving new concepts and dreams. And this is actually the key thing with Pisces energy. So because it's the sign that ends the zodiac, it's quite representative of that mystery. And also the winter season is associated with this too. It's like that kind of mystery and the space between life and death where there's nothing, but there's something that creates conception. There's something that sparks and kind of creates the energy in order to then actually begin something new, like create new life. So it's almost that kind of like an idea that seemingly comes from nowhere, but we don't really know where, but it's coming from something. And that idea then sparks something, which is Aries, which then begins the process of the astrological wheel. So there really is like there's a potential for conception in Pisces season as well as the winter season because everything's quiet and inward and deep beneath the earth, or kind of, and because it doesn't have fixed or physical form, there's no really real limits. Pisces is boundless ocean, so there's no limits to what it can dream. That's why Piscean people can be actually incredible manifestors because they're not bound by the confines of logic of what makes sense of what exists already, right? They're connected with all possibility. And that's what makes them very, very creative people because they don't need to work from something that exists already. They're connected to the potential. So this is a very, very, very different tone to what Aquarius season brings, which is like logic, humanitarianism. It can be more community focused. This is a real kind of nice ending to the winter season where we can really deeply connect with that dreamy energy where we can really conceive ideas, get clear on what we want. And actually, one of the best things you can do to get clarity, particularly around this time of year, is to kind of stop and clear the decks and wait for inspiration to come. So the more you can create spaciousness, the more potential you are gonna like, the more potential you have for getting clarity from conceiving an idea that seemingly comes from nowhere. So if you're not sure on the direction you want to be traveling in, this is a really good time to get quiet and listen. So yeah, if Pisces is representative of things that don't have fixed form. So it's not an earth sign where things exist on the physical, tangible plane. So it can be intuition, spirituality, and it can also be emotions as well, because there's no fixed logic to emotion, right? It comes in waves. So a great time to get clear on how you're feeling. We have a full moon cycle within this, so you can start to really understand if you want to work on some particular emotional issue, or understand why you're feeling a certain way. Pisces energy can be really, really supportive of you getting into that compassionate space and understanding and noticing why you're feeling a certain way, or whatever's kind of coming to the surface for you at that time. Okay, and then we're also headed into eclipse territory now because we're going to have the first eclipse of 2025, which will be happening at the end of Pisces season. So even though the next moon isn't necessarily an eclipse because it's a little bit too far away, we are officially kind of starting the process of eclipse season. So this is really kind of where things start to build. Eclipses bring radical change, transformation, sudden kind of 180s. They can bring like major new beginnings and major endings. So you might start to feel the stirring of energy starting to build right now, but this next week or so is going to be quite soft and gentle until we reach that point where things are going to really ramp up. Okay, so moving on. So Thursday, the 20th of February, Mercury in Pisces is going to square Jupiter in Gemini. So this is the planet of Mercury is the planet of communication, and it's squaring, it's creating tension with the planet of growth and expansion. So Mercury and Pisces are actually a mutual reception here. So Jupiter is at its home in Pisces, Mercury is at its home in Gemini. So even though this is a tense aspect and they're both in their four because they really don't like to be in each other's signs, they kind of get each other. There's some sort of relationship between these planets. So it's less kind of tense and uncomfortable than it would be if it was two planets that maybe didn't have that mutual reception. So they're both that this can be like Mercury doesn't really like to be in Pisces because things can be confusing, and there's lack of clarity, there's a lack of tangibility, and it's like unable to see the way forward because things are too hazy. Or you could also be feeling boxed in and limited by logic because Jupiter wants to expand where it is, and Gemini wants to keep things simple and logical, and clear cut, right? So there is this sense of like maybe feeling boxed in by logic, not being able to spread your wings, and then also maybe the tension of like confusion, lack of clarity, not being able to move forward, or not understanding something, of things being unclear. So basically, murky waters around Thursday, the 20th of February, a couple of days before, a couple of days after. And if you're feeling that kind of icky, like tension, don't worry, this is going to pass. So, what I would really advise at this time, particularly, is when you're not clear on what's ahead, don't resist that. Because, Mercury in Pisces is teaching us how to be patient, and just take the step that's in front of you. You might not be able to see the future or where you're headed or get clarity or completely understand something, but you can take the step that's right in front of you, the step that's obvious. So just want to keep in mind, it's not particularly a long running transit, but it might just cause a little bit of tension around like Wednesday, Thursday, Friday this week. And then Sunday, the 23rd of February, we have Mercury in Pisces trining Mars, which is stationing retrograde in Cancer the following day at 17 degrees. So Mars has been retrograde since the 6th of December, and this really feels like because it's in a trine and it's Mercury, which is mental clarity, understanding, communication. It kind of feels like this is a moment of understanding and compassion, and almost like a sudden understanding of, okay, now I know how to move forward. So Mars retrogrades, they can bring heat, they can bring tension, they can bring things to the surface, they can make things pretty uncomfortable. It can also feel a bit like walking through mud, like you can't get things going, that things feel difficult. Mars is a planet of drive and motivation and moving things forward. Mars is action. So it can be quite uncomfortable when Mars is retrograde, or you can start getting in your head and thinking there's something wrong with you because you can't move something forward, when actually there's a very good reason for it. Mars retrogrades, like everything in astrology happens for a reason. These things don't happen to like make our lives really difficult for the sake of it. There's always a lesson in there. And as I've mentioned in the last few forecast episodes, in June, so we've had this Mars retrograde in Cancer throughout December and January, and then the last part, most of February as well. And then after Mars moves out of Cancer officially, is really done with the retrograde, we're looking at about April time. And then around June, Jupiter is then going to come through Cancer, and it's going to kind of bring the gifts from the dust that Mars kicked up. So Mars is kicking up dust right now. It's created a bit of tension. It's coming to the end of its retrograde journey. So it's kind of wrapping up about now. And then Jupiter is then going to come and give us gifts. So it'll like create growth, optimism, abundance, expansion in that area. So where there has been tension, there's then going to be positives that are going to feed off the back of that. So this is a period of time again to just get clear, take responsibility for what's happened. Mars is stationing. So, a Mercury transit to a planet like Mars happens fairly regularly. They're not huge deals, but they are something to take note of. However, when this is happening, when Mars is stationing retrograde, sorry, it's stationing direct. When a planet stations, it's moving either forwards or backwards. When a planet stations, it's kind of like it really emphasizes the planet because it stops, but it's like a ship turning in the water. That's always like Pam Gregory always uses that analogy, and I love it. Um, it's like a giant ship that's suddenly changing direction, so it stops, it slows down, and it moves. But because of the density of it, it becomes more pronounced. So you know, this is quite an interesting period of time. Again, because it's a very reflective week, we're going into that last quarter moon phase. We've got the watery, wintry energy, which is very inward and still and quiet. And then we have all this Pisces energy as well. There's a real sense of being able to finally get clarity on what these last couple months have been about. So since the 6th of December, but even a little bit before that as well, because Mars was in its pre-retrograde shadow before that. So it's really, really helpful if you can check what your astrology chart, because this will give you more of an indication of what area of life this transit has been working with. So for me, it's in my 7th house of relationships. For someone, it might be 4th house of home, 10th house of career, 11th house of friendship groups, lots of different things. So it's really important that you look at the area of life that it's impacting, because it really does give you clarity on what this period of time is trying to teach you and what you can take responsibility for now. Mars is stationing direct, so it's going to move on now. It's been kicking up dust, making things difficult. Things have been difficult to move forward, but Mars is going to station direct. So this Mercury trine is happening the day before Mars stations direct, and then it's going to move forward back over the territory that it's retrograded over. So anything that's not been able to move forward will suddenly finally be able to kind of move on, and you'll start to be able to build momentum again in life in the area that this has been impacting you the most. So, and then Jupiter's going to come give those gifts, right? So if we learn the lessons now, if we take responsibility for what's been happening in this area of our life and do something about it, then we're going to reap the benefits in the summer. And this Mercury trine to the Mars station is going to really support us with that. So Sunday, fantastic day for reflection, just understanding what's happening, maybe having a little look ahead. Where are you headed? What would you like to put your energy into now? Mars is shifting gear now. We're going to be able to move on. And this transit is going to really, really support us. It's such a nice transit to have as Mars is stationing direct. So again, very, very reflective week. Get clear, really deeply understand what's been kicked up, and really take responsibility, because it will pay dividends. Okay, so for those of you who are members, we've got a nice little journal prompt package for you, helping you do exactly that. So not only reflecting on the Mars retrograde, but also the themes that we've been focusing on in the membership this month. So around reflecting on and embodying different characters in order to flesh yourself out. So we've been working on this since the new moon, which is where we kind of set a tone for the month ahead. This month we've got some classes. We had a full moon coaching call last week where we shared and discussed how things have been progressing. And now, as we're moving into that kind of phase of the moon where we're starting to wrap things up, I really wanted to provide some journal prompts that are very reflective to help you understand what's working. Where do you feel like you need to maybe expand or put more attention, that kind of thing. So there's a really nice package of journal prompts there, along with some Mars retrograde reflection questions. And then in this week's recommended practices, I've put in a really nice water element flow, really nice yoga session, and also a moving energy session, which is a little bit of Tai Chi, Qigong, and then also energy techniques, just supporting you in balancing winter energy. So again, it connects deeply with the water element. A fantastic thing to do this week, particularly with that Pisces energy. It'll just help you kind of really connect with that with those qualities and make the most of them. And also, if you can kind of get yourself into alignment with that energy, then you're much more able to navigate it, particularly if you're going to be someone who might find that difficult. Water element energy, especially if you're someone who's very earthy or airy, quite logical, then sometimes watery seasons can be kind of hard because they're not exactly aligned with your energy. So sometimes when we work with embodying those qualities and fleshing ourselves out, as we've been doing on the membership with the characters, then it can be really, really beneficial for your energy system. And then you tend to notice that when you're aligning your energy in that way, that you start to respond to that energy differently. Um, and then we've also got the embodying the character daily practice and the journaling workshop that we released last week. And I've really encouraged people to keep going back to those, particularly the embodying a character practice as well. If we can try and make that a daily practice, or at least doing it a couple of times a week, it's only 8 minutes. It will just really help you keep moving, and keep embedding this new concept and this tool that we've been working with. So I think that's everything I wanted to touch on this week. Stay grounded, get watery, enjoy. And yeah, we'll have a little check in next week with some more astrology. Lots of love.